Hello, guys. So this is going to be something new. I have no idea how this is going to work. Going to do a clap check in 3, 2, 1. Yeah. So I have a couple of projects I want to work on today. I haven't eaten yet. I haven't done coffee yet. But that's okay because I can edit all this out. So I'm going to talk about a couple things today. This is going to be a Vanguard VOD. So Cardfight, Vanguard, Megacolony, all that good stuff. I'm also going to talk about I'm going to talk about the whole slew of things. It might be a two-parter. It might be a 2 different video thing. The first thing I wanted to talk about is So I wanted to talk to you all about how to play Megacolony, and a lot of people don't really think about it too much. A lot of people don't really talk about it too much. But one of the central core gameplay mechanics of the current premium Megacolony revolves around Rearguard Grade 3s, and it's not just as simple as Ghidorah call restand. Because there's a whole slew of different cards. There's almost a history to it at this point. So for those that don't understand, before the year 2019, there was a set called Awakening Zoo, and in Awakening Zoo, you know what? Let's go even further back. Than Awakening Zoo. Way before Awakening Zoo, Cardfight Vanguard was re-releasing a lot of its early G original stripe prints as Rearguard compatible grade 3s. In fact, they were a Rearguard or Vanguard on play skill usually. Fenrir was a pretty good example of this. Fenrir would not be the later Stride. Same thing with Darkface. Darkface would be replaced with Ghidorah. And the primary goal of LA Sadie's was to play along with and kind of play off of the new mechanics that Ghidorah gave, but it kind of fit the deck really well. So fast forward to 2019, we get the premium collection set, and in that premium collection set we get Guilty Empress, Darkface, Ghidorah, and you all know this card. This is the Stride Megacolony's been playing with for the past 4 years. God, we only got a new G unit last year. Didn't mean to peek the mic. I am so sorry. Fast forward a little bit again, or maybe unfast forward a bit. I actually did no research going into this. I'm not even going to bother. The future me will edit in the timestamps for this. Anyways, so first V premium set, I know this off the top of my head. We get a brand new grade 3 card known as Helldemise. And for those that don't know Helldemise, then you've never played against Megacolony before in premium, because this card is probably the most played extra grade 3 in the deck. Most people don't even know there are other options for this card. It's just if you're playing premium Megacolony, you better play Helldemise. There are no other options for this. And because of Guilty Empress, there's no reason to play Alicades anymore, or Darkface, as it's called. What really kind of spiraled this is that Guilty Empress can Soul Blast 1 when it attacks. They call it grade 3 from the deck. And because of that, Megacolony now has this multi-attack style it didn't have access to before. You could attack 2 times with front row units, call over another one, and then restand the other one. Basically, how it worked is Held Demise has an on place. It rests an opponent's rear guard, and it rests a rear guard you have. It's costless. It's not an if. It just does the whole thing. So if your opponent got like a damage stand trigger earlier, like now, like rest that shit down. It's going to stay paralyzed for guilty and persistent. Skill next turn. But it doesn't really end there. Oddly enough. Also in the same set as Hell Demise, the first V Premium set, is Death Warden Antlion. And for those that don't know Death Warden Antlion, then you probably haven't been playing Premium for very long, or like the rest of the people that didn't know what Hell Demise was, you don't play Premium against Megacolony at all. So the way this caused a little bit of a freak out when this card came out, because the skill of Death Warden Antlion says as such: Soul Blast 1 grade 3, discard 2 cards from your hand when this card attacks. Gets 10k power, a crit, and your opponent cannot guard with Sentinels. What made this card really good is that Zoa is a card. And what Zoa says is it makes a card 99,999 power constantly, and if the attack hits, the opponent loses the game. I think most people realize at this point that this is kind of a niche win con. There's a lot of G Guardians that can pretty easily block this. The fact that it can't be chosen by card effects means that like your opponent still can't denial Griffin it. They can't like reduce its critical by 2 or something. But it's still a neat card. Like it had synergy with I can't call Zoa a Megacolony mechanic, but you could still call it with Ghidorah, for example, give it 10k off of its skill, and get another extra 10k and a crit to pressure your opponent at 32,000 power. Now, are you actually going to kill your opponent and you're going to benefit off of the 2 cards you discarded? Probably not, no. That's why it's more of a niche card than it is unnecessarily a great card. Fast forward again in a little bit, we have the Gun and Colio set, as I like to call it, where Megacolony is introduced. But we actually get access to a different card known as Machining Ornamental. And for those that don't know Machining Ornamental, basically what it says is it rests all of your rear guards, and it does one of 2 skills. It does both if you Soul Blast a grade 3, but you're not doing that, so it's fine. So you can either have all rear guards gain 5,000 power. Now, why you would give your opponent's rear guards 5,000 power, I have no clue. Or your opponent can only stand 2 units next turn. Honestly, this doesn't really have a lot of premium value. It could be neat in a future where we see strides other than Ghidorah, or if Ghidorah gets banned, it could be a very neat option to make the opponent not able to stand their Vanguard, especially if they don't have any cards on rear guard. So, like, imagine you're in the Pale Moon matchup, and your opponent's like, oh, I'm gonna... Blah, blah, blah. Well, it doesn't really work with Silver Thorn, because Dorian has back... I'm rambling. It's an option, but it's not a great option. You could also call Cyclomatooth if you're playing Mill Colony, but Mill Colony's not viable. It counterblasts Soul Blast 1, makes your opponent mill 1, and if it's grade 1 or higher, it gets an extra crit. It also gets 10,000 power, so it's 22, but it's not good. Mill Colony's not good, man. Fast forward again, and we have the Rearguards set, also known as the Ghidorah set, also known as I really don't like the new Ghidorah. even though Cradles are just better paralyzed, even though it has the same weaknesses as Paralyzed. I'm not going to get into this. I'm going to get into this later. This will be a whole rant video. We get introduced to yet another grade 3 that synergizes with Guilty Empress in its intimidating mutant dark base. So the original grade 3 that was the Megacolony, Stridon, Heart Card, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if we even have a name for that at this point in Vanguard. But they basically made it so that Gridora functioned in V Premium the same way it did in the Premium collection. So, well, not really, because then it would be good. So it would also call grade 3s from the deck, and that's why Darkface was designed around it. So when it's placed, you can discard a card from your hand and give one of your opponent's units a Cradle. And for those that are unfamiliar with Cradle, Cradle is a newer Megacolony mechanic that basically seals away all of your opponent's abilities. You can consider that card basically deleted. It doesn't have any power, it doesn't have any abilities, and it doesn't have any card text. I think it can still stand. That's worth it to say. It is considered a change in state, kind of like Lock, interestingly enough. But when Darkface attacks, you can counterblast one to retire it. And that's when one of the more interesting things about Cradle comes up. When the card with the Cradle marker on it is retired, the player that placed the Cradle can search their deck for a card with the same grade as the card retired. And this is just really good. Obviously, it falls apart against certain strategies that, bind, bounce to hand, shove it in soul, shuffle it into deck. The list goes on. You could even lock the card. You could lock the card, unlock it, and it's no longer cradled anymore. Actually, would you lock it with the Cradle? Go, Megacolony fan. Search the web. Do you lose the Cradle? I would assume you would. Actually, the Cradle is kind of on top of the card, so would it just get turned face down with the card? That's funny. I don't think that's how that works. Actually, we would just lose the Cradle status. But, yeah, so that was a card, and that was a neat interaction. It works really well in builds where you kind of have to choke point certain cards that are still a threat, even if you paralyze them. It's just a really, really, really neat grade 3, even if you're doing that. And I'm going to chew on something because I am super hungry. I lost my thought. So after this set, there wasn't really any Megacolony stuff that ever came out after that. And then we started getting the... Oh my god, what are they called? Clan Selection Booster Boxes, I believe. The Clan Selection Booster Boxes were a V Premium support wave that basically introduced about 4 new main deck cards and then some new trigger mechanic or something. I believe that's how... Actually, I don't believe that's how Crit Sentinels were introduced, but I do believe it introduced Heal Guardians. It might have introduced Crit Sentinels, I'm not sure, actually. It also reprinted a lot of things. But we're basically fast-forwarding a little bit again. And we would actually get a couple of cards. The first card is actually High Class Moth. High Class Moth is very interesting because this card is actually a grade 1. It doesn't really fall in line with the rest of the examples, but in the deck, it can also be considered as a grade 3. I don't remember if that's exactly the skill, if it has to be treated as a grade 3 in the deck, which makes it funny, because then that would mean, like, when you're, like, making your deck ratios and you submit it to a tournament, if you don't say High Class Moth is a grade 3 in the deck, you're lying. You're lying to the tournament suppliers. I am tournament supplier. I'm going insane, can't you tell? But with so many more builds in Megacolony coming out, it's kind of showing that Megacolony is just a lot more expensive. It's just very cost heavy in a lot of its builds. So High Class Month is a great way to not only refill your deck, but it's a great way to get a lot of counter charge. It's a neat search option with Guilty Empress, and even if you're not playing it for that function, it's still a really good card. But I believe in the same set that was introduced, which I think was V-Clan Collection 1, or I believe it was 2. I think Megacolony is like every even set. I'm not exactly sure about that for sure, so don't quote me on that. I'm sure future me will probably, hopefully, edit something in. Maybe, hopefully, gosh dang it. But yeah. The other card is known as Ancient Scissors, and Ancient Scissors is basically just Hell Demise with more context. So on top of having a gift marker for Protect, obviously, the way this card works is when it's placed on Rearguard, you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your Rearguards, stand it, and Ancient Scissors will get 10,000 power. So not only does it work with Ghidorah, but if you have the extra cards in Soul, you can Soul Blast and you can get more power off of it, which means if you're calling it with Guilty Empress, you can get about a 20,000 power increase on just a random front row you have after attacking 3 times already. It's pretty good. Like, it's pretty neat, like, looking at it like that. And I kind of enjoy it a lot. On top of that, when it's in the drop zone, you can counterblast and call it after the Vanguard attacks if your opponent has taken damage this turn. It's pretty niche and it's extremely conditional. It really depends. Like, the deck is already pretty cost heavy, so you don't know if you'll actually be able to afford the counterblast. Plus, you still have to Soul Blast in order to get the cost. You kind of have to count on your opponent either taking a damage or having taken damage, which means that you have to like plan really carefully if you're relying on the drop zone skill. But I think the extra text kind of just makes it a good card. I think it just like adds a lot to it. Personally, I think that it's not only neat, but it's pretty useful. I think in V Premium, it's pretty strong. Except the main deck in V Premium isn't that good, so I'm not even going to worry about that. So we're going to fast forward a little bit again, and nothing really comes up for a long time. There might have been a point where you call... No, there's just really nothing else for a long time. But the beautiful thing about Megacolony is it's not restricted to, well, you know, V Premium and G. So, one of the neat things about Megacolony is it belongs to Stoicheia, and Stoicheia has recently gotten a lot of support. The Stoicheia support lines up a good bit with what Megacolony wants to do. I don't know every grade 3 that can actually interact with Megacolony right now, and obviously it might depend a little bit what can do what and when it can do it. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to go through some of the big ones that we've been seeing recently, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit. So the first one that I wanted to bring up is Inlet Pulse. Inlet Pulse has gone crazy. It has already been announced for a reprint. I have already salted over this. I am not going to be making the budget build for Megacolony because, well, that'll still be its own video. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. That's not important. Basically, at the end of the turn, if you attack 4 or more times, you can shove it into Soul and you draw a card. So this is not only a cost refunder, it's a great resourcing card, but it also nets you advantage. And the great thing, and by great thing I mean terrible thing about Megacolony, is that it doesn't really advantage well. You're not really going to be fighting your opponent for how many more cards you have in hand than them, you're not really going to be in that situation a lot of the time, unless you're playing like maybe a more defensive build. If you're just drawing a bunch of cards but you're not playing much, even then, you might not get the amount of hand size that some other premium builds will get in this format. That's just how it's going right now. There's not really a lot we can do about it. I think that Pulse has more capability in the Flagberg Megacolony premium build, the Gym Flag build, as I like to call it. Bug Lover Gym Flag, let's go. Anyways, but like it still has a lot of use as like a niche like Soul Refunder and builds that rely on it a lot. With the introduction of Sweet Cocktail into the format, as well as Blister. I'm sure that a lot of builds are really like soul heavy. So like having more stuff that can shove stuff in soul is really, really neat. The only other card like I could think of at the top of my head is actually Shield Fisher. The only reason I could possibly think of that you would be running Shield Fisher in your main deck is if that was your primary Vanguard. For those that also aren't aware, Shield Fisher is a newer build in Megacolony. And basically the concept behind the deck is literally just like, if it's 18k on Vanguard, that must mean it's pretty good. It doesn't do anything else. It does have Persona Ride, which means there is like a good reason to run like 4 copies of this card. Besides Ultimate Striding, but who Ultimate Strides in 2023, right? Everything can guard everything. It's actually crazy. Unless you're Megiddo and Grapple, in which case I can never block that. But yeah, if you call Shield Fisher from the deck, it removes the attack restriction on it, and it becomes a 28k rear guard. For those that don't understand, 28k means that it can't be blocked by a trigger, which means if your opponent somehow has only one card in their hand, unless that's a D Sentinel or a heal trigger, there's almost no way they're going to block it. I guess also Blitz Orders, but whatever. That's not relevant. That's not going to happen. Bah. Anyways. So that's all about that I wanted to talk about. Let me know if you guys want to learn like more about Megacolony. Even if you guys don't, I'm going to keep talking about it because I think it's important to know that these options exist. It's great for deck building. It's great for people that are trying to consider a lot of the different options that they have. Obviously, there might be some better or some worse. A lot of that's going to fall down on the player at the end of the day. A lot of it's going to be the player trying to figure out for the best, like what they're going to be able to do and how they're going to be able to do it. Yeah. It's just something to consider. And I hope you all have a good day and a good night. If I finish the video here, I might just keep talking about this new stuff. So hello.